Thank you for joining me here on the last segment of today's show and closing out this entire episode with some more NFC East topics, talking about the New York Giants and their sixth overall pick in this year's NFL draft, Malik Nabers. I think knowing now how everything played out and knowing all the behind the scenes of Hard Knocks and losing Saquon and keeping Daniel Jones and just how awkward it was sometimes watching Hard Knocks with John Mara and the talks with Joe Shane and everything like that, it all broke down in a very weird and awkward situation, really not painting the Giants in the best of lights going forward, but that ultimately makes Malik Nabers now, again in hindsight, to me, the best choice that we've seen the Giants make overall, definitely in this offseason, but maybe potentially in the last few seasons because of how high I consider Malik Nabers at this point in time. Like I said before, he was considered one of the best receivers, period, in this year's draft, but also by a lot of teams, by a lot of scouts and executives, considered the best receiver in this draft with the kind of season that he had at LSU and just competing there with Marvin Harrison. You know, you're picking 1As and 1Bs there potentially when deciding between Marvin and Malik. They were probably the best two, the most pro-ready receivers in the draft, and luckily for the Giants, they got one of them. If they weren't going to get the quarterback like they were rumored to potentially trade up for, I'm glad that they got Malik, and I was hoping that they got Malik just because, again, I'm a sucker for the comparisons to old players, and this was screaming, Odell Beckham Jr. when they drafted him a few years back now. It made too much sense to draft Malik Nabers, so they ended up doing that, and now already you can see the pro-level readiness that I just talked about with Malik already in training camp. Going against his own teammates, he showed out. He made a lot of great catches, but most recently, they had the joint practice at the start of this week with the Detroit Lions, and it's different competition. You're going up against a different team. You have to, play a little bit better and up the standard a little bit more when you're just not going against guys that you're familiar with, that you're ultimately going to shake hands with afterwards. There was no shaking hands in these practices because there was a lot of fists and punches being thrown instead of hands being shaken. But with that being the case, with all the competitive juices flowing, you saw Malik Nabers' talent really exceed a lot of the coverages, a lot of the corners that he was going up against, and all credit to the offense of the New York Giants and Daniel Jones for getting Malik Nabers the ball. And over the course of this training camp, I think more and more we're going to see the realization that this guy is the guy, the face already probably of this offense to go forward in 2024. Some of the reports from training camp are pretty crazy from the Detroit Lions joint practice because they reported that I'm sure you guys saw the clip where they were actually fighting Malik Nabers and Kirby Joseph, but in that play, while it was still a football play, the cornerback, Kirby Joseph, broke up the pass to Malik Nabers, and that was reportedly the only incompletion that he had in all the joint practices that the Lions and the Giants had over the couple days that they worked together. Ultimately, Malik Nabers, according to these reports, was a total of 17 of 18 in terms of completions to targets over the 2 days of practicing with the Detroit Lions. So that nugget right there tells me everything I pretty much need to know. The first time he is facing NFL-level competition, he only had one drop, and the other ones were just money, were just clockwork for this guy already. In an offense that a lot might not consider prolific or high-powered or anything like that, to have Malik produce like this already, I know it's only training camp. I know I may be getting ahead of myself, but that's how high I hold Malik Nabers, and I think this just adds more fuel to the fire that the Giants got this one right. And on top of that, you've seen already the endless highlights of everything being posted. It seems like every practice you see something regarding Malik Nabers, and he's already earned the praise from Brian Dable, some of his other teammates, Daniel Jones already, and of course Malik Nabers sees this, and of course I think he also realizes that it is a big deal practicing against these other players in joint practices, and how that speaks for itself when you're beating NFL level corners on one of the teams that was one of the best teams in the NFL overall last year as well. And to that, Malik Nabers said, I can compete with these guys in the league. That was just the main thing, just going against somebody else before the season starts. Let's see what I need to work on, getting my plays down. That's really about it. Just continue to be me. And he did very well ultimately against the Detroit Lions, and we should see him in the preseason game tonight. I've been following it a little bit. I don't think he's actually gotten a reception just yet. I could double check, but the game is still 0-0 in terms of any developments in that game. Yeah, he hasn't gotten any receptions so far, so maybe he's not playing, or maybe they just haven't gotten him the ball. But overall, this guy, I think, is the real deal for the Giants going forward. And overall, for Nabers, I think, with how I'm talking about him, obviously, I think you can put him already in that conversation to potentially be the Offensive Rookie of the Year in a class where it was dominated by all the quarterbacks that went in the first round. And, Caleb is probably the favorite. Then you have Jaden Daniels right there, and all the praise that he's getting. Drake May, maybe not so much, obviously, because he's not starting. Same thing for J.J. McCarthy and Michael Penix. So, Bo Nix is also in there. But really, those two main guys, Caleb and Jaden, are probably the main favorites. And I'm sure a lot of betting sites have Marvin Harrison up there as well. But I wouldn't rule out Malik Nabers just yet. All those other guys might be ahead of them just because of the team situation, obviously, with the Commanders, the Bears, and arguably the Cardinals right there. You can give or take with the talent on the Giants and the Cardinals. Those other guys probably are favored because of the state of their teams, but Malik, honestly, right away, it all really comes down to the play calling and Daniel Jones and the ability to get him the ball. And if they could do that, no matter where he is on these betting sites in terms of Offensive Rookie of the Year, I think playing with guys like Jalen Hyatt, Isaiah Hodgins, Wan'Dale Robinson, Allen Robinson as well, I failed to mention him before, and Darius Slayton, they have a decent group where, it might not compete right away on paper with some of the other talented offenses, but it's not a bad group overall where everybody's going to go to Malik Nabers. He's still only a rookie, of course, obviously, so all these other guys are going to get their attention, and the amount of guys that they have also, they can rotate them in and out, deploy them differently, give these defenses different looks, and that way I think also Malik Nabers could benefit from that going forward. And I think he's definitely going to lead this group and not overshadow, but outshine the rest of them just based on talent alone. And they're great complementary pieces to Malik Nabers as well. As a group, to complement each other, I think they're going to do a lot better than maybe some people give them credit for. It doesn't mean the Giants are going to be that much better, but they have some pieces in place that give you at least a little bit of hope, and it is something that this team needs, obviously, because last year the Giants were the third worst team in the NFL in points per game, scoring an average of 15.6 over the course of those 17 games. The only teams that were better, or the only teams that they were better than, were the Carolina Panthers and the New England Patriots. So you don't want to be in that company. Malik Nabers is not going to stand for being in that conversation with being one of the worst offenses in the NFL. So now that you have him, I don't think it's crazy with all the guys that I mentioned as well. And if Daniel Jones can show up a little bit and stay healthy, I don't think it's crazy to think that this team could put up at least 19 to 20, pretty much on average throughout the entire 17 games in 2024. I think having a guy like Malik scoring touchdowns as well could have that shift in points where you're averaging at least 6 to 5 more points from one year to another. And also, talking about more of the stats and more of the guys from last year, the Giants overall obviously weren't that great record-wise, but because of their leading receiver only having 770 yards, Wan'Dale Robinson led in receptions with only 60. That's a parameter of what the Giants were dealing with last year, but now with Malik Nabers coming in, I could truly see Malik, if everything goes as I think it could go in the best of scenarios, I could see Malik exceeding both of those targets, or both of those scores, and getting maybe 80 plus receptions, at least 900 yards just himself. And what kind of impact that could do to the Giants overall, that could give you maybe a a win or two more, and now you're at least seeing improvement in this offense. You're not losing consecutive games. If you have a talented guy like this swinging the momentum of some of these close games, some of these big games, I think it could do a lot for this Giants team. And again, to preface it, I'm not saying that they're going to just switch to an above 500 team, but at least you're going to see progress, and that's ideally what you want to see with everything that went down, like I said, this offseason, losing arguably the best player, the most popular player that you've had in a long time. This is ideally the perfect kind of guy that you'd want in your building, and it's a shame that we're not going to see them together, but at least you got something to kind of rescue this, and it could save some jobs, talking about Brian Daboll and Joe Shane, just based on how everything played out. If we could see some progress, I think this could work out pretty well to at least buy them some time to make this offense a little bit better. In regards to what they do with the quarterback, that's a whole different thing that we could talk about for another segment. But Malik Nabers, the expectations on him already are to be the guy in New York, and that might not be fair, but I think Malik is definitely up for it. He's talented enough to bear that responsibility this upcoming year. But let me know what you guys think of my expectations for Malik and how you guys see his impact benefiting the Giants in 2024. But with that being said now, that'll wrap it up for today's show. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, as well as following the network on all forms of social media as well. And if you want to see more of this show, check out both YouTube channels, the Podcast Network channel and the Sports Network channel on YouTube for various forms of watching content around the NFL, around this show as well. And as a final reminder, tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more discussions and all the latest stories around the NFL with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host. Thanking you for joining me, and I hope to see you back here with me to end the week on tomorrow's show.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to